So our report is on the Seagram building, which is located at 375 Park Avenue in New York. It is currently owned by Abby Rosen's RFR Holdings and is located in the C5 2.5 and C5 3 commercial zoning districts. It is considered a trophy property in the heart of Midtown and was the most influential building of its time. It was considered to be a masterpiece of international style architecture, and most buildings today can credit their design due to the Seagram building. Specifically, the open plaza design, as it is pushed back 100 feet from the street edge. Besides the plaza, the Seagram building has a 150-car parking garage and 3 restaurant spaces. It was also one of the costliest buildings to be constructed during its time, and it is in close proximity to Grand Central Station and in a very upscale area that generates a steady flow of street traffic.
Yeah, so the improvements on the land, the Seagram building has had many different owners throughout the years. Luckily, all of which have had the focus of wanting to maintain the attraction of it as a landmark. In 1959, the Seagram building introduced its four-season restaurant, which eventually was a financial flop. It was very unsuccessful in the sense that it only focused on high-end clients, and it didn't end up working out. Today, many years later, and $30 million later, they opened up 3 restaurants that are now the Grill, the Lobster, and the Pool. With constantly changing and transforming trends in New York City, the building is going to transform as well. However, because of the landmark status that the Seagram building holds, the owners couldn't really change it that much. It was very little altering when it came down to anything. The one thing that's very important to note on this piece of property is that there is a very big parking garage, which is very rare to have in a building in New York City, considering that optimization of the land is extremely important. There are plans to change that. However, there are renders on Zola and on the New York City government website that indicate that they're wanting to maneuver into a playground for that space instead. An important feature to mention was that the building was built. It was built on an elevated plaza, which was the first of its kind. It took over half of the property's floor plan in the beginning, and it was really unique. And they really set a standard to what New York City architecture was going to transform into. And that feature in itself, the elevated plaza, became very heavily adopted, and it was seen rapidly across a lot of commercial real estate after that as well. And next slide, please. And now we're moving on to zoning. So 375 Park Avenue is designated under the C5 to 2.5 and C5-3, which is under the commercial district zoning classification. According to the zoning district, the description is strictly in which a building is intended for commercial offices and high-end retail establishments, which is obviously it's an office building. They have a couple of restaurants, high-end restaurants, so that fits right in. These sections also mention explicitly what is prohibited on these properties, which specifically on the website states home maintenance services, auto rental establishments, and illuminated street signs on the outside. The Seagram building, additionally to having office spaces, has high-end restaurants as well, as I mentioned, and that is the Grill. The Grill is a new addition, and it's a very successful one that's been performing very well. According, with the historic status that the building holds, which is being designated as a landmark, properties of historic status like that tend to sell for 20% more than normal designations. So the historic status definitely has a lot of, definitely affects the overall value in the end. According to New York City websites, the FAR was calculated on Zola, which is around 14. Considering the Seagram building is recognized as a historical landmark, not much can be done from a development standpoint. So whatever the building has already been optimized in, that's what it is at the moment. Yeah, so there isn't much for a new developer. There's not much a new developer would be able to do. And that's the next slide.
The building was also the engineering masterpiece of its time as well. It was built with a steel frame and non-structural glass walls, one of the first buildings in New York City to do so. They had mass amounts of natural lighting due to the floor-to-ceiling glass window. In its time of construction, in 1950, this was the tallest office building ever built with high-strength bolts and vertical truss wind bracing. It also has a bronze facade in compliance to the building codes that the steel frame must be covered with fireproof materials. Back in the days, buildings were usually covered with concrete, but the architect Ludwig Mies van der Hoel wanted to expose the steel frame. He creatively replicated this by using a toned bronze facade to cover the exterior. While the building has always been in a considerably well-maintained physical condition, the Seagram building requires maintenance due to its age. For instance, RFL Holdings provides more than $150,000 per year for a restoration, and that includes oiling the facade by hand from top to bottom to prevent the bronze from oxidizing. Over the time, the building has received occasional minor complaints and reports of incidents and accidents. The building had minor construction permits violations in the past, as well as minor elevator issues, but all issues had been quickly resolved, and the building has no ongoing violations at this time. The building has a minimal possibility of natural disaster risk. However, the building is considered to be one of the least energy saving buildings in the city with a score of 3 out of 100, which is really low. The median is about 50. This is due to the large fluorescent lightings covering almost the entire ceilings and using the single pane glass walls. The current owner, RFR, addressed the issue and announced that they would invest at least $12 million to increase the energy efficiency with modern technology.
Title and ownership issues. RFR Holdings acquired the Seagram building in the year 2000 for $375 million. However, in 2013, Abby Rosen of RFR Holding had taken full ownership, paid off various stakeholders, and borrowed roughly $1 billion to refinance the debt. Currently, the Seagram building leases to 52 tenants, but recently lost Wells Fargo, which has been in the Seagram building since 2004. They have been struggling to find someone to take over their place, but RFR Holdings consistently leases out at least 90% of their property since acquisition. In regards to COVID-19, the Seagram building has actually continued to receive payment from almost all of their tenants.
In international style architecture, these are 390 Park Avenue, 350 Park Avenue, and 450 Park Avenue. The official sales price has been used in lieu of the sales price as the most recent transactions for the properties are varying in time, making it difficult to approximate the value due to the growing inflation rates and other considerable factors. The official value assessment of the property by the New York City Department of Finance is made annually. We assume that these stated values are adjusted to inflation rates and other external economic fluctuations and reflect the present fair market value. The price shown here are all in dollars per square foot. So for 390 Park Avenue, we have $346.56. For 350 Park Avenue, $304.18. For 450 Park Avenue, it's $325.99. We calculated the value per square foot for a Seagram building by averaging the value of the properties, and by following the procedures, the approximated value of the Seagram building is $325.58. However, the actual official price is $330.96. We believe that the Seagram building landmark status affects its higher property value, and the use of such integrated materials during the construction also furthers up the property value as well.
Yeah, so on to the conclusion. After completing the full due diligence report, we believe that the Seagram building would be worth investing in for numerous reasons. This is mainly due to the high property value valuation. As we mentioned in the previous slide, the Seagram building is also registered as a historic landmark. And as I mentioned earlier, these properties tend to sell more, especially in New York City, than normal designations. So that's something that holds very true to value, especially for this property, compared to normal designations. And more recently, something to focus on is that in 2019 and 2020, They've been extremely tough markets to navigate, especially in commercial real estate due to the global pandemic that's going on. And seeing as the Seagram building has managed to maintain close to almost 90% in occupancy rates during these turbulent markets makes it extremely appealing to an investor to come in and invest in the property. And those are the reasons why we believe as a group that this is a great property to invest in, especially now more than ever. So thank you.
Thank you.
Thank you.
Okay.